Hey guys, it's Tehi. We are going to continue a video I made a couple weeks ago, which is the how to prepare for an end tier boss fight. Kind of behind, and I know I said I would do it over Ansrek, but that might be lost on some people now, so I decided we will focus on Gallywix for this now. So the very first thing that I personally do, and this isn't specifically to a raid leader, it would help a raid leader, but this is more so for the individual player if you want to get the most out of your preparation, be as ready for a boss as possible. These are the things that I would tell you to do. Again, raid leaders can get a lot out of this, but this is mostly talking about individual players and what you can do to get out of it. So what I like to do is I like to find guilds that I know are good, find guilds that I know I can count on to have good strategies, good survivability, good everything, while also, no one's perfect. So we can all learn from other guilds that have already killed these boss fights and learn from what they did on progression, learn from their mistakes so that we can all show up and be as ready for a boss fight as possible. So the first one we're going to look at is Echoes EU Laughing Skull. They have really great strategies. Their Silken Court strategy was amazing. It actually is what I built our strategy off of to find consistency in the pulls for a seemingly inconsistent boss that's somewhat random in its positioning, but we were able to basically manipulate where the boss went 95% of the time because of how they did the fight. So big props to them. They're pretty dang smart. So the first thing that I did is I went to their calendar page and found their progression pulls. They had 3 nights of Gallywix, 36 pulls, 33 pulls, and then 6 pulls to kill. And I started looking at consistency things that were happening across all of their wipes. So when I was looking at this, it's like, okay, they're having a lot of deaths at like this 110 mark just across this entire first day. So what's that mean for me? I want to like at least 2 pulls, if not more, of why are they dying at 110? That way, as me as a player or me as a raid leader, I can go back to my raid team and tell them like, hey, these are the things we got to watch out for in the first minute 10 of the fight. The second thing is what else is there? Okay, there's a lot of deaths at like this 248 to 250 area. Okay, so we should probably go check that out too. So this is going to second day. This is going to be third day, but let's focus on what's happening at this 110 mark. So right off the rip, we have 2 people die right off the bat. And then we just have people dying to the Gallywix Pest Eliminator, which is just the damage and the lines that come out when you start the phase. And this can be a replay situation where you go look at the replay and go see, are people overlapping? They shouldn't be. Are they too far away from the boss? Because if you don't know if you're too far away from the boss, you're going to end up taking more damage. And then we're dying to Total Destruction, which is just the constant damage that goes out that increases over time. At the longer you stay in this phase, the longer it takes you to kick the boss. So it looks like they lose most people before 110. They lose most people within 40 seconds of the fight. So obviously it's the first pulls. They're figuring it out a little bit. But this is something that like you can go to your raid team or me as a player and be like, okay, there's a lot of damage going out here, so I have to know how to play this, where my position needs to be, and this is probably a personal. If we go to another pull that's at like 120, we kind of see the deaths have gone down a little bit. We are still losing people to that pest eliminator. So it's just showing you that like even 10 pulls later, they're still losing people to this. So again, as a raider, you can show up and be super ready to survive this part. And as a raid leader, go into your raid team and make sure like, hey, everyone's using a personal. And if you have a holy priest on this fight, for me, it's 100% you use Symbol of Hope right after, because you're just going to get all the 30 seconds back on all those defensives anyways. Why wouldn't you? So then we also have like Death's Gigablast, and then we blow up the TikTok canisters, which at this time, we have 6 people dead, 5 people dead if we used a battle res. So we probably just don't even have enough people to soak. So we're not going to worry about that. Now let's move on to like the 250 deaths. So those people that have done Gallywix know this is the most difficult part of the entire fight, especially of phase 1, where you have to, take the bomb out from the tank, then you have blaze lines, and then you have these canisters blow up. So, and you have to lock 8 out for like the 3rd, 4th soaks, mainly to make sure you get to there in time. Otherwise, the entire raid dies. So for me, this is one of those things where I, as a player, would want to go watch clips, kills, whatever it might be, of specifically this time of the fight right here. We're not going to do that in this video, so that I can figure out like, okay, how do I make sure that I'm not the reason we're failing this mechanic? How do I make sure that this is what's happening? And what you would find when you start watching videos is their weak aura that, most people are using liquids weak auras will count down, and as soon as it says that the frontal bait hits 0, that is your lock gate timer. You don't wait for the actual visual graphic to show up. I personally just wait once that timer hits, 0.0. I'm gating. I'm not waiting around anymore. The other thing too is if you watch, the guilds that are really, really good, you'll find that they send their blaze line people out super early. As soon as those blaze lines go out, they go to approximately where they're going to soak a canister at. And they do that so that they can't obviously gate, excuse me, they can't obviously gate to the back of the room where those 3rd and 4th soaks are, but they can pre-position themselves when they have those blaze lines so they can get those soaks super early. We'll go to another pull again, and this 250-ish part, again, most wipes are going to be because of this. If we go to the later parts of the fight, this is when they're getting into phase 2, and we can start seeing like why they're dying in phase 2. We're still dying to this Pest Eliminator, we're dying to this Haywire Workshop, we're dying to Juice It, which is the cast getting off, and then we just have a bunch of random deaths. So this is one of those pulls where it just shows you like, okay, we're still having early deaths to some things that we probably shouldn't be dying to anymore. So this is why preparing and getting ready for things like this, in my opinion, is really, really helpful. Then we go to another phase 2 pull. This is about a minute later after that last pull we looked at. And we see like, okay, we're dying to Radiant Electricity still early in the fight. And then we have 3 deaths to Haywire Workshop. And that was, more deaths that we had in this previous log. So Haywire Workshop is little static electricity on the ground. It's the most hard-hitting ability, basically, of phase 2, phase 3, and the intermissions. So you just have to find, like, okay, the fight most people would know by the time they get here is a pretty simple fight in comparison to most end tier boss fights. So that could probably make you know that, okay, maybe these things are static. Maybe it appears the same way every single pull, no matter what, and I can find like a route. And that's what's true on this fight. They spawn the same way every single pull, no matter what. So from my perspective, and this is a little bit more work, but to me it's worth not dying on progression, is looking at all those scenarios and being like, okay, I need to know that like this is not going to be safe when I need to run away from this suppression, and knowing what those routes are. That's an extra level of things, but if you really want to prepare really well and be one of those unsittable, unbenchable players for your raid team, the best way to do it is not dying, and the best way to do that is preparing so that you can keep yourself survivable as possible. And then as we look at more pulls, another phase 2 pull, we have kind of a weird mixture of deaths going on here. We're dying to Finale Blast, Giga Boom, Giga Coils. We have Haywire Workshop happening again, and you can see consistency in the deaths. Now here we have a kill. In the kill, we have someone die to Giga Blast, which is there just standing in the frontal. But then we have no one die to the Haywire Workshop anymore. So that just shows you can compare these consistently dying at whatever timer pulls. So they're consistently dying at like this 640 to 750 part of phase 2. And then you can go look at their kill and be like, oh, they completely eradicated those deaths from their kill. Which, as me as a player, should even push me further to be like, I need to go look at what those Haywire Workshops are. Because that seems like that's the only thing that can really kill me. That would be, a very easy thing to not die to in phase 2 if I just prepare correctly. So that's just one log. Another team I like to look at is Nascent. They are also very, very good. They actually killed the boss super fast. They did, let's see here, a 24 pull into a 26 pull into a 2 pull kill. So I pulled a lot more videos here for this one. So again, we're going to see the same thing. We have these minute 10 to minute 20 deaths. It's going to be the exact same thing. And then we start seeing these 250 wipes as well. And it's as we go through the logs, we're going to see it's the same thing. They're also dying to the frontal. They're dying to this beginning of the fight. This is only their second pull ever. This is someone dying to the canisters going off, which this is a bomb person for them. So that just, leads to a domino effect of everybody dying. Now we're into the 250 zone. People, fuse canisters, TikTok canisters. into canister detonation. This is just, again, another soak issue. So this shows you once again that, like, hey, almost every single raid team is going to struggle with this. So as a raid leader, as a player, don't get tilted when people are dying, are failing this mechanic. But simultaneously, should also demonstrate to you that, like, hey, I can prepare for this part of the fight. I can try to learn this so that, if I fail this once, I can know why I failed it, so I don't have to replicate that failure again. Going into even further, again, same thing all over again at this 250 mark, all over again. And then we go into their second day of pulls. And I want to point this out to show, like, okay, they're kind of done dying at this 110 mark. They have, this 136 wipe, they have a 112, 150, 113, and that's kind of about it. So that shows they made progress, and even in the second day, they're getting 5+ minute wipes now, which is great. But when they are dying in phase one, you'll see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll count that 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 of their what? I don't even know how many pulls this is. 9 of their 3, 6, 8, 16 came from dying to this 250 gate mark. So that should show you that as a player, hey, I really got to learn this one part of the fight, because on day 2, they're getting really good progression, but they lost 9 pulls, 33% of their pulls for the day, because they were unable to get past this 250 mark of the fight, which again is the most difficult. But if you are trying to be a guild to lower your pull count, these are the things that you need to point out to your players. These are the things that your players need to, like, discover as they're preparing for a boss fight, so that they can kill this fight as efficiently as possible and the little amount of pulls as possible. And then we can start seeing, like, okay, we're getting to phase 2. What's happening in phase 2? They're dying within, like, the same 30-40 second window right here. They're dying within the same 20-second window right here at the 7-minute mark. So we can start looking at those right off the bat. These 4-minute and a half wipes. Haywire Workshop, dying to radiant electricity, which is getting hit by the rotating beam in the intermission. Mayhem Rockets, missing a kick, more than likely, assuming it wasn't kicked early, dying to Haywire Workshop, and then it starts a cascading effect of everyone dead. Which, the only reason this fight is punishing is if one of your bomb people, like Keter here, dies, it's going to lead to a domino effect of, like, the entire raid is now just dead, right? So it's super important for those people who are designated with the bomb dunking assignments to really know how to survive after they dunk the bomb, because if they don't, you're going to wipe. Going more into the 4.5-minute wipes, again, Shock Barrage, missed kick more than likely, leads to a cascading effect of everything, which shows you we lost one person to this on the previous pull. We're losing another person to this now. If you don't have a kick order set up, you need to. Going into the last of these 4.5-ish minute wipes, dying to the beam, dying to 3 people die to missing kicks here, and that just leads to a cascading effect of everybody dying from there. And now we're on to the kill pull. So the pull, the only wipe that they had this night, we can go and look like, okay, they cleaned up a lot of their mistakes. They're not dying to many things anymore, but they are dying to Haywire Workshop a little bit. And if we go back to those other pulls, you'll see, like, we are losing people to Haywire Workshop, which is a little different from the Laughing Skulls, Echoes, pulls, but we are losing people to that still. And then Og dies and just starts a cascading effect, or probably the tank that's dunking the bomb falls off the map, and that causes the cascading effect, which is another thing to look at as a tank. You're probably knowing that as a warrior tank on this fight, you're probably dunking the bomb unless you have a Vengeance Demon Hunter. So that's another thing you can learn. And, if you make the mistake, you make the mistake. It's not a big deal. But hopefully it's like you make that mistake once. You know what you made a mistake because you studied it and you had a plan and your plan just failed, and now you understand it better, right? This is one of those things where it's like, hey, maybe you do have to do it to fully understand. I'm not a big person in believing that's true for most mechanics in WoW, but I can see in this scenario why, it's such a unique thing that hasn't been done very often or at all, if at all, in WoW before. So maybe you do need to do it to actually get it. So then they go to the kill, and we can look real quick before we go to damage taken by stuff and see, like, okay, they do lose 2 people to Haywire Workshop. They do lose someone to the Spinning Beam, Haywire Workshop, and it even shows you that they got the kill, but they had a dirty kill, which, most first kills can be dirty kills. It's fine. Boss is dead. But they're dying to Haywire Workshop. So this should really emphasize to you that we've looked at 2 different raid teams, and we found, like, hey, they're dying to the same stuff for the most part. So it should really show you like, hey, I should prepare to know where I can and can't be for things like these. But if we go to damage taken, and I'm just using the Boomy because I'm super familiar with Boomkin, and we can look at as an entire raid team. Let's actually get rid of the Boomkin for now. We can actually look like damage taken from ability is what we can change it to, and see like how does the damage smooth out across the entire pool. Well, we see like the beginning mechanic of the fight is like the 7th or 8th most taken damage, and that's like the first 20 seconds of the boss fight. So that should basically tell you you should be popping a defensive no matter what. The fact that we went 9 minutes and 20 seconds past that part of the fight, and it's the 7th, 8th most damage is pretty impressive to show you that this is probably going to be a personal. We can see the canister detonations does a lot, the venting heat does a lot, the Gallywix finale blast, which is really just when the suppression ends, he does a big burst of damage, and then we just have a lot of very like raid wide ticking damage that happens across the entire fight. So we can also see the Haywire Workshop actually hit people 37 times on this pull, and the average tick is 6.45 million. So, this is another reason why you should be learning how to prevent this damage from ever happening to you, because it's almost surely going to kill you. It also takes like every half a second, so even just walking through it very quickly may tick you twice, and you may just die, depending on like the server tick and stuff. We can also see Scatter Bomb Canisters, which is the Phase 2, Phase 3 red frontal soaks. They hit for a metric crap ton as well. And then just figuring out like outside of this first part of the fight, how do we want to set up our defensives so that we can figure these things out. So we can see here the canister detonation and the venting heats are two of the most hard-hitting abilities of the fight. So we can use these ticking things and the burst damage of the canisters to try to line up our walls to try to figure out how we should be using them. So we can see these canister detonations and how they line up to the venting heats right here. And then we can go to specifically, let's go back to Dusters, and we can see how he is using his walls in relation to these things here. So we can go back to Dusters and throw it on this sheet. We're going to go to his casts. We're going to add Barkskin, and we are going to add all of this to the same graph real quick. This and summary, and we can kind of see, let's get rid of all of this. We can kind of see how he is taking damage, and the raid as an entirety is taking damage. And then we can change his bark skin to a different color to make it easier to see. And then we can see like how he's using his bark skin, and these are ticks of bark skin that are happening, I'm fairly certain, with how like the damage is coming out across the entire fight. So you can see he's basically using it when damage is peaking across the entire time. The last couple things is just looking at your damage CDs. I'm not a huge believer in the first thing you should do is look at your damage CDs. I think that's the worst thing you can do first off, because a lot of people will be like, okay, I know how to do my damage and that's it, I'm done, I'm not going to learn anymore. I don't think that's going to be the limiting factor when it comes to progressing and killing bosses fast. I'm a huge believer in learning the mechanics first. But now that we've done everything else prior to that and know like what we need to go look at to figure out how we want to do that, now we can look at our damage CDs and figure that all out. And basically I just assigned, CA, Convoke, and Force of Nature for me are the 3 major CDs for Boomkin, and just setting that up in a graph, and then I can go to my liquid reminders and set all of that up. And then obviously checking out our CDs. Lorgs is good to a certain extent. The reason I don't like Lorgs, as I've said in previous videos, is I kind of want to know when are we using certain abilities when. Like as a Boomkin, you have certain rules, 2+ targets that are going to live more than however many seconds, like the length of the starfall, and then simultaneously when it comes to dotting, they have to live at least 7 seconds or whatever it is with your dots before you need to dot them, which this kill was mid-April, so the ads were living that long. And yeah, so the last thing just to emphasize this CD defensive CD usage even more is in liquid reminders. You can actually see like, hey, this venting heat and the canisters going off like in a coincide way. If I hit my bark skin right here, it's going to leave into the venting heat. If I use my bark skin at the beginning of the venting heat, it's actually going to extend past to when the canisters go off, because bark skin is going to last me 12 seconds. This venting heat, not worth using because it's only a single damage instance, so to me that's worthless. And then we can go canisters, using it at the end of the canisters into the venting heat here. You have lots of different combinations you can do, but using your defenses efficiently to help survive, especially on progression, is finding ways to use your defensives that can not block, but help mitigate damage from a combination of different damage events simultaneously. Now, obviously, there's going to be scenarios in which, like, hey, there's this huge hard-hitting ability, I need something for that. That trumps what I'm talking about right now. But on a fight like Gallywix, and that doesn't really happen, that's how I personally have set up my defensives so that I can be super survivable for things like that. I think that's all I want to talk about. I'm sorry that these kinds of videos are super long, but there's just so much to go through. What I would tell you to do going from here is looking at how exactly those haywire mechanics work in the last phase, watching different clips of multiple different raid teams. I'm not a huge believer in watching the same player of the same mechanic over and over again. Yes, that's helpful to a certain extent, but that doesn't mean your guild is going to do it exactly that way. So preparing for 2 or 3 different variable circumstances is probably good for you. It also doesn't take that much more effort to go do. And yeah, just finding safe ways to survive those kinds of things. So thank you for watching, guys. Apologies again that it's so long. There's going to be at least one more video talking about this, and then multiple videos following up about different bosses and how I personally would prepare for them. I'm also going to do a race to first last, how I would prepare for these last 2 bosses, Mugsy and Gallywix, right now, if I was participating in that, to try to help more people get race to world last as well. So thank you. Lots of extra people have been watching lately. Super cool. There's going to be more videos coming out about Mana Forge Omega 2. So if that's what you've been liking the content for, that's great. Thanks for sticking around and watching this long ass video. And I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.